Hello everyone and welcome to another Pyro gaming video. In this video I'm going to be showing you guys my favorite loadouts, class builds, armor sets, and weapons to use on my Titan. And it's worth noting that everything that I will be talking about in this video suits my playstyle, which is more of a cautious approach. I like to keep some distance between me and the enemies. I do not like to rush all that much, although I will occasionally. But for the most part, I play pretty reserved in PvE, and same goes for PvP. We will be talking about both. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So this is my everyday Titan. This is the gear set that I typically have like 90% of the time. I'm wearing the Omega Mechanos armor set. You got this from Curse of Osiris from DestinyOverwatch's Engrams. If you do not have this armor set right now, I'm pretty sure you can never get it again. But yeah, it's one of my favorite Titan sets. I think it looks really neat. The exotic armor piece that I use is the Sunfire Furnace perk on Hollowfire Heart. Greatly improves the recharge rate of your solar abilities while Hammer of Soul is charged. Basically what that means is when your super is charged and you're using Sunbreaker, your grenade and melee recharge twice as fast. It's very handy. I definitely like it. For the mods that I use, I try to focus mostly on my kinetic weapon and the recovery, resilience, and mobility boosts with my mods. So you can see here that we have a resilience mod, improves reload speed for equipped kinetic, improves reload speed for equipped kinetic. Then we have increased armor's recovery and increased resilience. The reason that I only focus on kinetic is because I think that reload is the most valuable one of these perks. If you disagree, more power to you. But me personally, I would much rather be able to reload quickly and start getting shots into enemies faster as opposed to have a little bit more stability. I don't have issues controlling stability of Nameless Midnight and Sunshot because they both have pretty good stability overall. So that's why I typically like to run reload. Plus, a lot of the kinetic weapons, looking at you Better Devils, has really low reload speed, so having those bonuses helps me out quite a bit. So looking at the subclass build that I prefer to use for Sunbreaker, you can see that I do use Code of the Fireforged. We have Explosive Pyre, enemies killed with Hammer of Soul explode, very handy. It's kind of like Dragonfly for your hammer. We have Tempered Metal, solar ability kills grant you and nearby allies bonus movement and reload speed. Again, going back to what I was just talking about, reload speed is very important to me. Hammer Strike, this is the main reason that I use this build. While sprinting, use this melee ability to swing a blazing hammer that weakens enemies. This makes you do 50% more damage to any enemy that you melee. It's very handy on bosses, especially if you're trying to melt a boss with a shotgun or something like that in a short amount of time. Great for things like Escalation Protocol, Nightfalls, so on. Very good. And Vulcan's Rage, hammers shatter into explosive molten embers on impact. Again, kind of goes with this one. Really nice together. You get a lot of add damage when you're throwing these at bosses. For the grenade that I use, I'm not crazy about any of these grenades, if I'm being honest. I don't really care all that much for any of these, but I do think Incendiary is my favorite for the simple fact that it has a pretty good blast radius. This one most definitely will do the most damage over time of the three. But my problem with this one is I can never get it to land right. It always hits the ground and like shoots off in the wrong direction, so I just don't even bother with it. I prefer to stick with Incendiary. Towering Barricade versus Rally Barricade. The only time I switch this up is Rally Barricade is PvE and Towering Barricade is PvP, although admittedly I do not use my Barricade all that much in the Crucible. So on to my weapons. I do like to run the Scout Rifle Hand Cannon combo. Now it's worth noting that this loadout is going to change up quite a bit in about 2 months. I'm sure you could guess why. But for now, I wanted to go ahead and make this because we still have 2 months. You have 2 months of this loadout system, so you might as well try out some new things and get used to it. So yeah, Nameless Midnight is an all-around workhorse weapon. It is a fantastic scout rifle. You obtain this from Commander Zavala, from ranking him up and getting his packages, or by completing the Nightfall or Heroic Strikes, where you go and get a powerful engram from him. It can drop from all of that. Nameless Midnight, like I said, is just an all-around workhorse weapon. It is really solid. Coming with explosive rounds and steady rounds, or you could do Flared Magwell if you want to increase reload, but I have the reload bonuses on my stuff, so I prefer steady rounds for that little bit of stability boost. I like the red dot micro sight, just because it's clean, simple, doesn't zoom in a lot. But yeah, all around, just fantastic, fantastic scout rifle. I like to pair that with Sunshot. Sunshot, the exotic hand cannon. I do have it masterworked. You can see the boost to range and stability. It's super solid, super crispy, man. Once you have this thing masterworked, it is so smooth to use. It feels so good in PvE. Not the best in PvP. Like I said, we will be talking about my PvP loadouts later on in the video. For now, we're focusing on PvE. Sunshot is one of the better exotics for PvE. Now for my power weapon, I do change that up quite a bit depending on what I'm doing, depending on what kind of boss I'm facing, depending on what kind of enemies I'm going up against. Sins of the Past is a good idiot-proof weapon in the sense that as long as you can shoot the rocket, not even directly at the enemy that you're shooting at, but close enough, you're going to do pretty good damage. So it's kind of one of those foolproof power weapons. However, I do enjoy using Perfect Paradox. I'm on PlayStation right now. I do not have the Ikello shotgun on PlayStation that you get from Escalation Protocol yet because my RNG is trash. But Perfect Paradox, Hawthorne's Field Forge shotgun, and Ikellos are three of my favorite shotguns in this game. They do insane amount of DPS, and you combine those with Hammer Strike, and you can absolutely melt a boss. Now, in addition to those, I also like to use the Tarantula Linear Fusion Rifle. If you've never used a Tarantula, it has the same base damage for a crit as Sleeper Simulant. The difference being that Sleeper Simulant carries 2 rounds in the magazine, whereas Tarantula, Man of War, and the one that Dead Orbit sells carries 4 rounds in the magazine and 14 rounds total as compared to Sleeper Simulant's 8. In addition to that, it also has faster reload time and better handling in general, but Sleeper Simulant has the Ricochet perk. So if you're really good at ricocheting, then Sleeper could be the better one. But again, Tarantula is kind of more idiot-proof. I prefer it over Sleeper. For the exotics that I carry, I keep Merciless on because it does really good damage. I keep Darcy on because it is one of the highest DPS dealing exotics or weapons in general in the game right now. And I also like to run Tractor Cannon if I'm running with a team. Things like Escalation Protocol, Nightfalls with a Singe and Heavyweight. Pretty much anything. Tractor Cannon is really, really good. It gives you an increase in void damage, and you can absolutely melt bosses. Now, I will change up this loadout sometimes. I will switch it up and make it Better Devils and Mananan. Same thing, Scout Rifle, Hand Cannon. I just switched the slots. Mananan, I get asked all the time, what's that Scout Rifle you're using in your videos? The answer is usually always Mananan. Mananan has explosive rounds, alloy magazine, steady rounds, really good sights. It's light, it's snappy, 200 rounds per minute, does really good damage. It's an all-around great workhorse weapon, like Nameless Midnight, just slightly lower impact. You can see here that the rounds per minute for Mananan is 200, whereas Nameless Midnight is 180. The difference is negligible. Mananan is a very solid scout rifle. I will also sometimes switch that up and go with the Masterworked Braytech RWP Mark II Scout Rifle that you get from Anna Bray. For some reason, the Masterwork on this seems to be glitched. It's still not counting for me. I don't know why, but, you know, it's whatever. But yeah, moving on to the Kinetic Better Devils, again, is one of those solid all-around workhorse weapons. It's really good. Explosive rounds right now are probably one of the best perks in this game, at least for the time being. If you don't know how explosive rounds work, you have what's known as damage drop-off on your weapons. Hand cannons do not have the best range, so the further the enemy is away from you when you shoot them, you get damage drop-off, meaning that you don't get the maximum amount of damage. Explosive rounds, however, splits the damage that you could potentially do 50-50. The explosive round is always going to do 50% of your max damage, whereas the regular bullet is going to have damage drop-off. So with explosive rounds, you're always going to do a little bit more damage than a normal hand cannon, scout rifle, whatever, at range. So it's very valuable to use. Moving on to some of my exotics down here, I do really enjoy Polaris Lance. If I'm running Better Devils, Polaris Lance is a really good weapon to kind of accentuate what Better Devils does, kind of gives you that extra oomph in your playstyle. I try to build all of my loadouts with close, medium, and long range covered, or close, medium, and long range. Sometimes I'll switch it up and go more close range, but still make sure that I have something for long range as well. We have Graviton Lance. I'll be honest, this weapon's kind of underwhelming to me in PvE. It's not terrible by any means, I just feel like there are better options for clearing ads. But if I am doing something with Void Burn, then Graviton Lance is usually what I'm going to use, unless it's a boss, in which case I'm going to switch to Tractor Cannon. Risk Runner, again, is a solid weapon, but it's one that I only really use when there is Arc Burn in the Strike, or the Nightfall, or anything that I'm doing. That's about the only time that I use Risk Runner, but when I do use it, it pays for itself, man. It's really solid in the area that it's supposed to be used in. For these primaries up here, I keep a Crimson on each one of my characters because it is handy. Things like Renown in the Faction Rally and stuff like that. It's really good to get your health back. I keep Huckleberry on each of my characters. This is actually really solid for things like Escalation Protocol or strikes with a lot of ads. Getting a kill when you are getting a kill with this weapon reloads part of the magazine, so you can literally just shoot forever. It's a really handy weapon to have. Lately, I have been using Rat King quite a bit. Rat King is super fun since it got buffed, even when you're using it by yourself and you're not getting the Rat Pack perk benefits. If you don't know Rat King, the fully automatic weapon becomes stronger when nearby allies also have it, stacks up to 6 times, and it also has Vermin. Reloading immediately after a kill grants a brief period, guys. Brief period of invisibility. So basically, every time you get a kill and you reload with this thing, you get to be invisible for 7 seconds. This is actually really, really handy. If you're trying to solo a Nightfall, if you're trying to, do some stuff in the raid that requires you to run around and be around a bunch of enemies, like the opening of Spire of Stars, this is actually super, super handy, and I would recommend giving it a shot. Being invisible is a huge advantage. I also keep a Mida multi-tool on each of my characters just because it has a special place in my heart. It reminds me of doing Vault of Glass and Vanilla Destiny, and it's really fun to use. Even in Destiny 2, it's still pretty solid. It's one of the better scout rifles that there is. So that is my everyday PvE loadouts. So now let's go ahead and look at some specialty loadouts for Crucible, raids, stuff like that. So when I load into a raid on the Leviathan, this is typically the armor set and loadout that I'm using. I do like to use the Prestige Leviathan raid gear. It looks really neat, it looks very unique. You don't see a lot of people using this because not a lot of people do the Prestige raid. But with the, I guess you could call it chroma over here on the sides and everything, it really pops, it really stands out, it looks really nice. The raid armor also has perks that give you bonuses in the Leviathan. So for example, the helmet here, while you're on the Leviathan, activating a solar super recharges grenades. While you're on the Leviathan, your melee kills increase damage by 20%. That's actually a really good boost. The chest piece offers you increased power damage from your power weapons after you get a kill with it. Your boots give you, using energy weapons to defeat normal enemies will boost your energy weapon damage by 15%, and a class item, you do 25% more damage with your solar abilities. You can also swap all of these ability-based ones to be Void or Arc. I just prefer using Hammer Strike and Sunbreaker while I'm in the raids because it does a lot of damage. It's good for bosses, it's good for ads, it's good for everything in between. And that's why I use it. For my weapons, I like to run the Midnight Coup in the raid. It's just solid, man. It comes with Rampage and Outlaw. You reload quick, you do a lot of damage. It's one of the better weapons in the game for clearing out a bunch of ads in a short amount of time. The only thing I don't like about this hand cannon is the stability is not great. This would be one where if I was going to change some of the perks, instead of going with a reload perk on my armor, I would go with increased kinetic stability, or something like that, increased kinetic recoil control or something to that extent. But like I said, with the raid perks that you have on this armor, I'd rather do more damage with my abilities, my energy weapon, and my power weapons, as opposed to reloading a little bit quicker or having a little bit more stability, because, let's be honest, I'm going to be using this the most because of the perk that it offers. Now for the next weapon, again, I try to do close, medium, and long range on every build that I do. So this is my close range, this is my medium to long range, and this would be my medium range and my higher power enemies. Merciless is just all around great. I will switch this up depending on the encounter. For something like dogs, for example, in the Leviathan raid, I might switch to Perfect Paradox. For something like Callus in the raid, I might switch to Darcy. For Argos, I might use Darcy because it does really good DPS. These are all really, really good to use. For Spire of Stars, Tractor Cannon, Melting Point, go together pretty well. If you have a bunch of other people running void weapons, it could be really useful. It just depends on the situation, depends on the encounter, depends on the boss, depends on who I'm playing with and who the other people or what the other people are using in my fire team. I have not yet gotten the Raid Ghost, but something I forgot to mention in my other loadout was that I keep the star map shell on because it detects caches within a 50-meter range and increases glimmer gains on all destinations. So I can go to Earth, Titan, Io, doesn't matter. I can see chests pop up on my map 50 meters away. It's really handy if you're into chest farming. The only time I'll switch that up in a patrol area is if I'm going to Mercury specifically, then I will put on Sagira's shell. So yeah, that's pretty much that. Another thing about the Ghost is the Fire Victoria shell. I use this one for Crucible and Strikes, Nightfall, stuff like that, because it grants a chance to obtain additional faction consumables in Strikes and Crucible. The exotic Ghost shells are really handy because it does what the legendary Ghost shells do, but it does it without you having to carry 10 different Ghost shells. Like this one does the job of like 5 different Ghosts. It's really nice. This one does the job of a couple of different Ghosts. Again, really nice. So that is typically my raid loadout. The only thing that I forgot to mention, I don't have it on me, but Sleeper Simulant is also really good for dogs if you can get in the habit of shooting the ground right in front of the dogs so that it ricochets and hits them with all 5 of the ricochet rounds. Sleeper Simulant can actually melt the dogs pretty quickly, but again, it just depends on your playstyle, how good your aim is, all that stuff. So that's my raid loadout. Let's look at the next one. Alright, so moving on to Crucible. This is my Titan's Crucible loadout. I do mix this up a little bit. I will put on the Dune Marchers on my Titan here. And one of the reasons is because it brings me to 5-5-5 for my mobility, resilience, recovery. It's a really good balance between all of them. For the armor itself, I do like to run the trial set, except for the gloves. I don't like the flawless trial set. I don't like the way the gloves look, so for that I use the regular Crucible gloves, just because I think they look a little bit better with this set. For the perks on this armor, again, I try to get stat bonuses, only for this one, instead of focusing on reload, I do like to go for more stability. So for that reason, you can see here that I have the resilience mod, but starting down here, reduces recoil for equipped energy weapon. This one gives me a little bit faster grenades cooldown for arc. This one here gives me more mobility, and this one improves reload speed for kinetic. I kind of mix those up a little bit more because in the Crucible you want to try to get as much as you can. For the weapons that I use, Jade Rabbit is currently my favorite Crucible weapon. This thing is absolutely filthy. The exotic perk, Fate of All Fools, chain body shots to gain bonus damage on your next precision shot and return ammo to the magazine. Basically what this means is if you get a couple of body shots, then your next precision is going to do more damage. So with this perk, if you shoot somebody in the body 2 times and then shoot them in the head once, that one headshot is going to deal extra damage, and it allows you to 3-tap in the Crucible, which on a high impact scout, this is, to my knowledge, the only one that can do that on a consistent basis. All the other similar archetype scout rifles require 4 headshots. This one requires 2 bodies and 1 headshot. It's really, really handy. And another cool thing about this is, let's say that you're in a gunfight with one Guardian in the Crucible, you get the 2 body shots and then the headshot, and then somebody else comes up with full health, you start hitting them with headshots, you're automatically going to get that bonus damage on the precision because it carries over until you reload. So it's just all around a really fun Crucible weapon. It beats Vigilance Wing and Graviton Lance at range, so it's a really good counter to those. Again, I like to keep close, medium, and long range covered, so because of that, I'm running a scout rifle here. This is my medium to long range. This is going to be my close to medium range. Uriel's Gift is still very good in the Crucible. Has high caliber rounds, it staggers, it makes their sights bounce, it makes you harder for them to hit. It's just all around really solid. I do enjoy sniping in the Crucible, so I typically have the Trials Sniper, the Long Walk, always equipped. Not that this is a very overpowered sniper rifle by any means, but it feels good. It feels snappy, it feels solid, it's easy to aim. I enjoy it. I will mix up my Crucible loadout from time to time depending on the map. If it's going to be a map that has a lot of close quarters combat, you know, something where a scout rifle maybe isn't the best option, then I will switch it over to the Antiope D. I will sometimes use Graviton Lance with my loadout as well. This is also a very solid loadout. Additionally, I will run something a little bit more close range, so the Jade Rabbit will be my long range, and the Last Hope sidearm will be those close range encounters. Again, Last Hope is super solid in the Crucible. It's still very, very good. Down here, I will switch this up from time to time too. I will use the Morgan D rocket launcher if I don't feel like sniping, which is not very often. But I like the Morgan D because it's one of the few rocket launchers in this game that comes with tracking. And in the Crucible, you lock onto an enemy and fire this thing. It has really high velocity and it tracks the enemy aggressively. It's pretty much a free kill every time you lock on and shoot it. It's really nice. Really, really handy. I would definitely recommend trying it out. For the subclass that I use, I typically run Striker in the Crucible, and I do use the one with Magnitude to get an additional Pulse Grenade. Pulse Grenades are probably the strongest grenades in the game right now. One of these will kill an enemy in the Crucible very easily, but just in case, you have two. Combining that with the increased cooldown, or grenades recharge faster when using an arc subclass mod on a piece of your armor, you have grenades a lot. It's really fun. I will sometimes switch it up and use Sunbreaker in the Crucible. When I'm using Sunbreaker, I will switch it to the bottom tier or the bottom build, just because you throw a little sunspot on or you throw a hammer at your feet and you create a sunspot. You stand inside that sunspot and you can just spam hammers. It's really fun in the Crucible. The only downside of it is you're just standing perfectly still, and even with the additional shields that you get from Sunspot, you can still get killed pretty quickly. So it's kind of one of those things like, you know, you wanna use it at your own discretion. Certain maps play a little bit different. Like if, you know, there's some really good alleyways where you can throw your hammers from a distance. That's where this is going to come in handy. If you're going to be doing close quarters, Explosive Pyre and Vulcan's Rage are really good, especially when enemies are grouped up. You'll get a lot of multi-kills with this top one. But yeah, that's basically my Crucible loadout. That's about all I do here. Let's go ahead and move on to the last one. So my last build that I'm going to show you guys is going to be my my Faction Rally build. I keep a set of faction armor on each of my characters for the Faction Rally. With the changes that they made where you can only pledge to one faction, I do have faction sets for each of my characters. So my Titan here will have a New Monarchy, Future War Cult, and Dead Orbit armor set. The reason I do this is because I don't want to be restricted during the Faction Rally to only farming with one character. I like to use all three of my characters. I like to change it up. I don't like to just do the same thing with the same guy every single time. So having the full faction set will grant you more renown whenever you complete a public event, a patrol, things like that. Crimson with renown is pretty much a must-have. It's going to give you your health back. It's going to make life just all around much easier for you. Surprisingly, Rat King is also really good because of the invisibility. You can kill an enemy, go invisible, get some of your health back, kill an enemy, go invisible again. It's pretty handy, but I do prefer Crimson. Again, close, medium, long range. This is my long range weapon. And Tarantula I keep equipped because I can go into a lost sector and I can essentially snipe a boss from a distance as opposed to having to run up on them and get up in their face. Like I said, Tarantula is one of my favorite power weapons. It does really good damage. I would definitely recommend trying it out. But pretty basic, but I feel like it's worth noting since we're talking about Titan builds. Yeah, pretty solid. That's gonna do it for this one, guys. This is pretty much everything that I do on my Titan. Like every activity that I do in Destiny 2 on my Titan, you have seen my weapons and loadouts and class builds and armor sets and all that stuff for it. So drop a comment in the box below. Let me know if you'd like to see similar videos for the Warlock and the Hunter, and I will try my best to get those up as soon as possible, but that is going to bring this video to an end. In case you were wondering, the emblem that I have is the Day of 7, or the 7th column emblem that you get from the Bungie store right now to celebrate Bungie Day, which was 7/7. Purchasing anything from the Bungie store between now and I believe July 14th will give you this emblem for free in-game. All proceeds from the Bungie store go to the Bungie Love Foundation, which is a non-profit charity. They do a lot of really good work. So not only are you getting a cool, unique emblem, but you're also helping a really cool charity that actually does some pretty great things. But that's going to bring this video to an end, guys. If you enjoyed it, click like. If you're new to the channel, click subscribe. And if you were already subscribed, I fucking love you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and take care.